Madolche in hat format gives me modern Yu-Gi-Oh vibes. The deck boasts 9 one-card starters, all of which open up a variety of plays. And with the versatility of the Exceed card pool, you have plenty of options. Madolche also holds the title of the best boss monster of this era, being Queen Tiramisu. Naturally, as the deck is all based on pastries and other forms of food, it is deep in lore and makes for interesting card artwork. As for the deck itself, it is quite compact, giving you space for various tech cards or other engines. This version will feature the Traptrix, but there is plenty left to explore. This is one of my takes on Madolche for hat format. For the main deck, I have 3 copies of Madolche Anjelly. Anjelly is an excellent starter in the Madolche deck, allowing you to tutor any name from your deck, usually being Hootcake to get your plays going. Thanks to Anjelly, this Hootcake cannot die by battle, and will be shuffling to the deck during the end phase of your next turn. We'll talk more about the combos later, but Anjelly is your first and best starter. Next up, I play 3 copies of Madolche Magileine. Magileine is sort of like a Stratos, being able to search you any Madolche when she is summoned or flipped. For those that play Edison format, this is the card that got Ultimate Offering Forbidden. She's a non-once per turn search and could search yourself, but usually you just end up grabbing the Anjelly. 3 copies of the aforementioned Hootcake. Hootcake is both worse and better than Magileine as a starter. He requires a monster engraved to banish for his effect, so going first, Hootcake alone is not a starter. But if we go second and we handtrap our opponent, or we have a monster from the graveyard previously, we can use his effect to tutor any Madolche monster from our deck, which usually ends up being the Anjelly. This postman can grab us any of Madolche's spell and traps from our deck when he's summoned if we control a beast monster. He's not the best card in our hand, but there is one card that can help us unclog him and still utilize his effect. And that is Madolche Meowfil. The Madolche lineup is quite small. There are various engines you can pair with the Madolche deck, be it artifacts, instant fusion or photon thrashers for a more explosive combo. You could play the hands as a form of breaking apart boards and giving you monsters in graveyard to banish with Hootcake's effect. But I feel the hands can be a bit lackluster in game 1, as they're not good into every single deck. Therefore I decided to play 2 copies of Traptrix Mermail instead. Mermail is a great turn 1 play, and if we banish her from the graveyard with Hootcake and reborn her with Levier the Sea Dragon, we can pop a back row. Other than that, I just feel she blends way better with the deck and the spell and trap cards that I'm playing as opposed to the hands. Then I'm playing a large suite of Handtraps to combat the soul charge decks, that being 3 copies of Maxi. Even using this as an upstart goblin is usually good enough because you can stunt your opponent while digging deeper into your deck to see your engine cards. Along with that, I have 2 copies of Effect Veiler and 2 copies of DD Crow. All of this gives me 12 different cards that usually hit the graveyard and stay there, to make sure that Hootcake always has a target to banish. And these hand traps are very good in hat format. For the spells, I play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Deck building in hat format is quite different than Edison format, which makes Upstart Goblin a much better card, because even the mid-range decks like Madolche leans very heavily into the combo aspect. And if you look at most decks in hat format, their starter cards tend to be around 9. Which isn't particularly high, so that makes you want to play Upstart Goblin. But it's not low either, so Upstart Goblin actually increases your consistency by quite a bit. And with a deck like this, it's just less moving pieces, so having a 37 card deck, or 35 if you want to count these as just draw cards, is not an issue at all. Then I played 2 copies of Pot of Duality. Whilst being a bit slow for a lot of decks in hat format, Madolche is one of the decks that can utilize Pot of Duality, seeing as you have Mermail and Magileine, which are both great starters to use turn 1 in tandem with Duality, and just to make sure you actually see your engine cards. If you side in the hands going second, usually you take out Duality, so it's not a concern. And with the hands, you at least have more ways to play, even though these are not Madolche engine cards. Since hat format is not a very explored format, I think it's fine to play cards like MST in your main deck, because you don't really know what you'll play against. Outside of hitting artifacts with MST, it's quite a fine card to use, and even against combo like Mermail or Sylvan, it has its uses. For the main deck Madolche spells, I play 1 copy of Chateau and 1 copy of Ticket. These can be searched off of Anjelly and it just makes your board that much stronger. And for the last spell, I play 1 copy of Dark Hole. Outside of Tiramisu, Madolche is not very good at clearing threats, so having a board wipe is quite nice. For the traps, 2 copies of Debunk. Opposing hand traps in your combo can be quite disturbing, so just being able to negate them is very good. Debunk can also take care of hands, which can screw up your board sometimes by crashing and popping your spells and monsters, or artifacts when they're popped. Then I have 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill. Breakthrough Skill is a pretty good trap in hat format, and it being able to be used from the grave is really good to prevent artifacts from destroying your Madolche cards. For the trap holes, I have one copy of Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare and one bottomless trap hole. These are two great traps you can search with Mermail, but since I'm only playing 2 Mermail, I felt 2 copies were fine. And Nightmare is very good at securing your board from Excitonite. Then I have one copy of Solemn Warning. In hat format, Judgment is banned and Warning is limited to 1. And whilst Warning can sometimes be bad when you go second heading into a board, it's usually good enough in game 1. 1 Torrential Tribute and 1 Compulsory Evacuation Device. For the extra deck, 1 copy of Equipped Engineer, 1 copy of Soul of the Silver Mountain, 1 copy of MX Saber Invoker. He can summon Madolche Gelato from your deck, and can give you the second 4-star to make your boss monster Tiramisu. 1 Ghost Trick Alucard, being a great way to deal with face-down Yugioh armors. 1 Levier the Sea Dragon. Hootcake banishes your monsters to be able to use his effect, so Levier can bring them back to bring out usually a Madolche monster similar to Invoker to make Tiramisu. 1 number 80 Rhapsodian Berserk, 1 Daigusto Emerald, 1 Laval Volchain. You almost never use the Laval Volchain to dump a monster, seeing as you have no graveyard recursion or graveyard effects. But you can use Shane to stack a hand trap on the top of your deck to draw it with Maxi in their turn, or an engine card to guarantee follow-up. 1 number 50 Black Strip of Corn. This card makes hands miss timing. 1 Evilswarm Excitonite. Generally Madolche goes quite plus, so Exciton is hard to pull off, but it's always good to have as a backup. 1 Diamond Direwolf. Both Hootcake and Meowfil are beasts, so we can pop them with Direwolf. 1 number 101 Silent Honor Arc, 1 Abyss Dweller, and 2 copies of Madolche Queen Tiramisu. Tiramisu is the strongest boss monster of this time. A non-target shuffle back 2 cards and recycle your resources is unheard of in hat format. And this card even came out 2 years prior, which is crazy to think about. For the side deck, I have 2 copies of Fire Hand and 2 copies of Ice Hand. The hands can be quite nice when your opponent brings in a multitude of hand traps, be it Veilers, Maxi or DD Crow, as they can effectively stall out the game and are very good against newer or less experienced players, because they just don't know how to play on hands properly. I side the second ticket. I'm siding the second ticket because you really want the second one of this when they pop it with MST, and drawing it is usually not that bad. The third copy of MST, 1 Soul Drain. Whilst shutting off your own graveyard effects so your Madolches don't shuffle back into the deck, if you use Soul Drain on Mermail for example, you can usually just win the game outright. 1 Acid Trap Hole for Yugioh. You can search this with Mermail and pop their Yugioh armor. 2 copies of DNA Surgery. You can use Surgery against Boujian and Spellbooks to really shut them out. 2 copies of Ghost Match. Every monster in your main deck is Earth, and the only non-Earths are the hands, so you just don't side these in together. Resolving a Ghost match can be backbreaking against the multiple attribute decks. And then 3 copies of Wiretap, being very good against Yugioh because you can stop their best starter in Yugioh gear, but also any trap card that threatens your place. If you enjoy my content, make sure to also subscribe to my second channel, linked in the description box down below. There I'll be posting more personalized and exclusive content.